Hey guys, Fish Tank Mike here. Today we are setting up the new Ancient Gardens tank. Out with the old, in with the new. Here's some footage of what the tank used to look like back in its heyday. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this tank. It was one of my favorites. I really did fall in love with this tank. It's a 167 gallon Waterbox Clear Pro. Check out Waterbox Aquariums, guys, if you're looking for a new super high quality, low iron, super clear rimless aquarium. But that aquascape is really a thing of the past. It hasn't been around for a long time. This aquarium has been sitting empty and waiting for me to get to it for a very long time. So today we're finally gonna get that done. As you can see, there's already a lot going on here, guys, so I gotta catch you up to where we are now. The primary ingredient for this hardscape, guys, is gonna be this cork bark. These are some pretty cool rounds of it that I was able to get, and all of them I think are at least 2 feet high. Remember when we set up this little aquarium, guys? This was essentially the test run for what I wanted to do over there in the big water box tank. I got to experiment with how to figure out how to get these cork bark rounds to stick down to the bottom of the aquarium because they are so buoyant. They're just gonna float up. So in this aquarium in particular, we put some pieces of dragon stone down at the bottom, and then we siliconed those to the bottom as well as to the cork bark rounds. And this worked out pretty well. It helped to level them out and get them at the right height, but that's not exactly what we're gonna be doing over here. We don't have a ton of substrate to help hide the rocks. If I did, then we would probably totally just silicone them to some rocks and then have them be part of the scape. But I really wanna try and avoid that, and since we have this egg crate down here on the bottom that's eventually going to be completely covered by the substrate, I'm hoping we can use that as an anchor and silicone these cork bark rounds to that directly. So to get up to this point, I basically had to go through, find out where I wanted each one of the cork bark trees to be, and then try my best to level out the bottoms of them so that they would sit flush on the egg crate. This took quite a bit of time because of the irregular shape of all of these, and because I wanted some to be leaning, one way or the other, so it took a while to get this perfect. So now the next task is to get the silicone out and just start dumping it in here. We want these things to be as structurally sound as possible. I don't want to have to worry about if I bump one, is it going to detach and float up, because these things are probably never going to be waterlogged. All the egg crate is pretty dried out. I mean, the substrate itself is still a little damp. It's just going to take way too long to dry this out completely, but I think we're going to be good as long as we can get a lot of silicone on the sides here, have it attached to the egg crate and to the glass beneath it. Then I'm hoping everything's going to work out. Coming out to the tank now the next day, guys, about 24 hours later, and everything is feeling pretty solid. So if we give these a wiggle, we're seeing a little bit of movement. The silicone is still going to be flexible. These things aren't going to be rock solid, but hopefully they're in place enough to where they're not going to get wonky once we fill the tank up or have any problems with them breaking off and floating up. That's one thing about this cork bark that's really tough, is that it's just so buoyant. And if these things decide they want to float up after any amount of time, once we fill the tank up, we're going to have some big problems because, obviously once we have this thing set up, if one or two of them decides to float up to the top, we're going to be in big trouble. We don't want to have to tear down the tank and start fresh, especially if that were to happen once we have fish in it and it's already an established aquarium. So we're gonna cross our fingers. I'm optimistic about it, and I think this is gonna be good enough. So now we just need to push the substrate back into position. We're gonna add in the stuff that we ended up taking out with the shop vac and probably add in a little bit more. So we have some of the UN contra soil that matches the brown stuff that we already have in here, so we'll just use that as a bit of a top off and maybe create a little bit more height in the rear of the aquarium. This is of course a nutrient-based substrate. We will be putting some plants in the substrate of this aquarium, but as you'll see as we move on through this process of planting, which we're about to do, most of the plant volume is going to be up and attached to the cork bark rounds. Before we start planting, guys, I want to go through the equipment just in case this is a new tank for you and you want to see what it is, and then also for me, because this tank hasn't been set up in so long, I need to go through and check, make sure everything's good, and then make some changes. Starting down here first with the filter, guys, this is an AWASA Biomaster Thermo 600, okay? Everything about it is good. We could easily reuse this, but AWASA just came out with a new canister filter. It is the Biomaster Thermo 850, and it's about 50 gallons per hour stronger. So we're going to take advantage of that, and we're just going to do a hot swap with the canisters. This thing also has a 400 watt heater instead of a 300 watt heater, so that's always never a bad thing to have a more powerful heater. We could certainly use it here in this big tank. And to my knowledge, most of everything is the same here with these two models. It just has a stronger pump and a more powerful heater. So because we already have everything the way we want it in here, you can't see it, but we have our inline CO2 diffuser on here. I'm not going to go and swap the tubes or anything. We're going to keep those. We're just going to unplug those and plug them in here. This filter, it hasn't been running for so long, the beneficial bacteria in here are probably shot anyway, so we're gonna have to start fresh regardless. These canisters have a bunch of these little trays, all with the foam in there, and then the two on the very bottom have some plastic biomedia, and I don't think we're gonna make any changes to this. We could swap it out with our own media if we wanted to, but I never did that with this one. We just ran with what it came with and everything was all good. And then here's the top. We carefully pick this up. I recommend not doing this one-handed, but you fit that in there. Make sure you're very careful with the heater there. You got to be careful of that, and then you're all good to go. My favorite feature of these filters, though, guys, is of course the built-in heater. Not having to have a heater in your tank somewhere taking up visual space is always a plus, and it's just one of the many reasons why I really like these. So that's now in place, guys. We got a little bit of water in here, almost all the way full, but again, quick start. We just pump that, start the siphon, and then we're all good to go. So if you guys want to check out AWASA canister filters, of course, they're a channel sponsor, and we appreciate them a lot. Thank you for sending this out to me. I think it's going to make a big difference with the flow in here. We're going to need it. So now we just got to make sure everything else is here. We got the CO2 Art Pro regulator. That's all hooked up originally the way it was before. And like I mentioned, that's running into our inline CO2 diffuser. Might be kind of hard to see here. Let me get you back here. And sorry about the light, but you can see there's just this glass one that's in place. We have some new stuff, but I don't feel a need to change it. We're getting pretty low here, so we will have to swap this tank out soon, but we will have enough to start with. And then we have the old wave pump here just to increase the flow of water in the tank. We had that over on this side, and that was just to counterbalance the flow from the canister filter. And I think we have a new pump that is made by Current USA. That's the lighting system that we have up here. We have the Serene lights and the background LED. We're going to get that all hooked up probably once we plant the tank. So I think that means we should probably go ahead and start that process, guys. Alright guys, so I think that's where we're going to pause for now with everything in the substrate. So we got the broadleaf sage kind of more towards the front of the tank around the pieces of wood, and then we have some crypts in the back. So those are some brown crypts and some green crypts. They're all going to melt off, of course, so really looking forward to that, but eventually I think it's going to look really good. I was kind of thinking maybe we do have some Italian Val, get some nice wavy plants in the background. but I just don't know if I want to do that. I'm not sure if that's the vibe that I want to go for. So we're going to hold off on that, but now we need to do the main plant, which is going to be on the cork bark, which I'm sure you guessed it, it's going to be a bunch of Java fern. So we got to work quick. We're going to make a mess in here with the cork bark, drilling holes in this so we have a place to put them in. Some of these pieces have little knots and holes that we can put Java fern in, but most of them we're going to have to improvise. We're going to have to get in here and make some room for them. So let's get started. Alright guys, a couple hours later, and I think I have everything where I want it. It doesn't look perfect, it does look a little wonky because the Java ferns are kind of, you know, a lot of them are slumped over. They will rise up and this will transform a little bit once we fill it up with water. So I think what I'm going to do now is just that. I'm going to fill it up, we're going to sit here, and hopefully these things don't fly up out of the tank. We did make kind of a mess down here with the cork bark, but luckily all of that stuff that we drilled out just floats. So once we fill it up, we'll be able to easily net this stuff out. That's a lesson that I learned when we did the little tank like this. And yeah, I think let's go ahead and fill it up, guys. Alright guys, so far so good. Everything looks pretty stable. I went through and did a little bit of check here and there to feel if any of them are a little wobbly, and everything's feeling pretty good so far. We got a few more of our static clings on here just because, you know, hey, we don't have fish in it yet, we might as well have something, right? But yeah, there's really only one more thing I want to do to the tank tonight before we call it quits here. We will come out tomorrow and check out the tank. Hopefully it's looking a lot more clear and we can really get a good look at it. But that is, of course, we're going to add some beneficial bacteria. So we'll come over here to the Fritz fridge. We'll grab a bottle of Turbo Start. Let's grab a fresh one. And we're just going to dump the whole thing in. The filter is running really good. I'm happy with the 50 more gallons per hour flow rate. This is gonna make it super cloudy, guys. It'll all dissipate here pretty quickly though. For sure tomorrow when we come out, we'll have something really nice to look at, but that's just gonna ensure that the environment is safe for fish whenever we do decide to add them. If we want to keep this bacterial cycle going though, we do need to add in a food source for them. There is going to be, you know, some debris and some stuff that will create some nitrogen for them, but we will have to make sure, if we're not going to get fish right away, which we're not, soon though, don't worry, we want to put in something like some fish food every once in a while to make sure that they have some food. And of course, you know, our CO2 did run out. It was super low. At least we got some footage of it working initially, and everything is good with the system. At least that's going to work out for us. We'll have to go get a new tank tomorrow, but yeah, that and the filter running really good. I haven't put in the circulation pump that lived over here on the old setup. I don't know if you guys remember that. We got that new current pump to put in here, and we'll probably stick it, I don't know, maybe we don't have a lot of room over here. It would be nice to put it back here in the back where you couldn't see it, but we might have to just put it up front here just to help move that water a little bit more. Point it this way towards the back so we get a nice circular flow going. Oh, and I almost forgot. The other thing we have to do is grab our net and fish out all of the floating cork bark little bits and pieces that were floating up here. We'll do that. I won't bore you with you know, a montage of me doing that. I'll go ahead and do that here before we call it quits tonight, and we'll check out the tank tomorrow. Wow, I have such a mess to clean up, guys. It's always fun setting up tanks, isn't it? So here we are, about, I don't know, 14 hours after setting up the tank, and here it is. It's been so long since I've filmed this tank, I forgot what angles I have to get at to prevent reflections from other tanks, but anyway guys, here it is. The water is looking a little tingy. We do have some tannin leach, obviously from the cork bark, but my experience with the little tank, it was that it didn't really do that much of a leach, okay? It is kind of a gradual progression of those tannins being in the water, and I don't really think I'm gonna hate that for this tank. I think that kind of goes with the vibe of it. And of course, at the end of the day, guys, the tannins are a beneficial thing for fish and whatever else you keep in it, so we might just roll with it. Yeah, I totally got lazy last night and didn't collect all the cork bark up there, but that's okay. It's not gonna go anywhere. We can always do it later, guys. It's not a big deal, right? You always gotta justify your laziness, right? So anyway, guys, that is the tank so far. I want to kind of pick out some things here, talk about things that I don't like. Number one is this little area right here. Those are too close. I don't like that gap, so I'm going to be, when we do the first water change, we'll drain this down and we'll put in another Java fern to kind of fill that out and make it look a little bit better. But then also, you know, I wish we would have had some more robust, bigger plants to really fill this thing out. That's something that we could always do here in the relative immediate future if it ends up bothering me, but this stuff is gonna grow. Java fern is a slow growing plant. We all know this, but it does grow and it does get really big, so I'm hoping that that happens sooner than later. A few things that I didn't show on camera when we did the setup was I put a few of the mats of Java fern in the back, kind of around this stump, and then I think this one, it's kind of hard to see, but there's some more filling out that we could do. We just need a little bit more Java fern. So I think that's really going to be like the next time that I do a big plant order, I'll just get some more, and then probably before we put in fish, we can fill this out a little bit more. Another thing about this scape for right now is that the foreground is really bare. I did that intentionally because I didn't have any plants around here that would be good for that. Dwarf hairgrass would be a nice thing if we wanted to cover this completely, which I'm kind of thinking that's what I want to do. So I'll make sure we get something for that on the next plant run, and then I was also thinking we could probably make use of some not so broadleaf dwarf sage, kind of mix that in and then have it be a gradient almost of the really small hairgrass and then a larger small dwarf sage and then the big stuff, and then of course we have the crypts in the back which will propagate themselves like crazy eventually once they melt off and start their submerged growth pattern. Guys, the main focus of this tank is supposed to be fish. The aquascape is kind of a secondary thing. I really want to highlight some awesome fish, so I have it down to 2 different types and I need to pick one of them. I don't want to tell you what they are because I want it to be a surprise. It's going to be really cool. Whatever we pick, it's going to be something that I haven't ever had on this channel before or showed you guys, so I'm really excited for that. This is just an aquascape that's going to take time to mature and get to where we want it to be, and I'm okay with that. I can be patient. Hopefully it's a low maintenance aquarium despite all of the cork bark, and we don't have any real big algae issues or anything like that. We have these 2 really fun spots that I hope the fish enjoy. We have that little hole in the tree, and then over here we have one in the front, and when you get back and look at the whole tank, you can see both of them. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but I'm really hoping that whatever we put in this tank are really gonna like it. And as the title says, guys, this is gonna be a Jurassic Park themed aquarium, okay? I don't want to give away too much more. 2020's been a heck of a year, so I think we all need to spoil ourselves a little bit here right at the end, get ready for the next year, have some optimism, and I'm really excited to show you guys what I got for this tank. It's gonna be pretty wild. It will be impossible to ignore the fact that this is also a underwater kind of like Amazon rainforest though, so that was also the vibe that I wanted to try and accomplish with this, right? Like an underwater forest that got filled up, and hopefully we can get some more stuff down here on the substrate to really make that visual come true. But I'm really looking forward to this tank, guys. I think it has a lot of really promising attributes to it that we're just gonna have to wait and let time go by, let plants grow, and see what this thing can become. And of course, guys, let me know what you think of the scape down in the comments. Also, let me know what you would put in this tank if you had it in your fish dungeon. What do you think? Do you like it? Is it a little I know it's not as intricate as the previous scape, Ancient Gardens was a tough act to follow, right? But I think, like I said, give it a little bit of time, and I think we're all really gonna like this one. And with that, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button if you like this video. Help it get out to more people. Share it with somebody who may be interested in aquariums so they can see all the kinds of unique things that you can do with aquariums, guys. That's what this channel is all about. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description for the gear and stuff that we used, and as well as the sticker store. There's also these clings and magnets if you're into jazzing up your fridge a little bit. Thank you so much for the support recently, and it seems like you guys really like these, so we're gonna keep making new designs. It's really fun for me. So anyway, guys, thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.